Gatekeeping hidden gems is something that I was thinking about today because, it's like fishing, a lot of fishing spots, they're pretty good spots. You're like, wow, this is a great fishing spot. And then, maybe you bring a friend that's got a little bit more of a loudmouth than you and blows the spot up. And now you no longer have a good fishing spot. And, gatekeeping is one of the things that kind of prevents that from happening. If you're real tight or you kind of just know that it's kind of like a thing between two of us, and you come in and, I invite you out to maybe a certain quarry or something, and we go out there, we have a good time. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a hidden secret, but it kind of like feels weird when you do that. And then, like, your friend goes back there without you and kind of like wears out the welcome. There's a lot of places where they're pretty secluded, or they're pretty, relatively unknown. And it's like, as long as they're unknown, that's the whole reason why it's a nice area. Like trying to think, there's a Leonardo DiCaprio movie called The Beach. And it's kind of about like the same thing, gatekeeping, the secret beach. And it's like, I think it kind of applies to a lot more stuff because it's like also like skate spots and, exploring abandoned buildings. You see some, I don't do that, but I know that there's like a lot of stuff I've seen where people are putting out spots and then they blow up, and then, the wrong type of person gets it shut down. What is the wrong type of person when it comes to some of this stuff? The wrong type of person is somebody that mindlessly posts the address or good directions on social media or public networks without, any vetting for who's coming in. And it's kind of funny because you don't really think about, vetting your friends or anything, but I know like there are certain things that I'm pretty guarded on that, they're kind of like public secrets, but it's like a public secret because, like, it's like where I go crabbing during the summer. It's like, yeah, I'll tell you where I go crabbing, but do I really tell you where I go crabbing? No. I tell you something that sounds close enough that you're not going to question it. And I do that because if somebody's like, oh man, guess what? He was out there for 2 hours, got a bushel of crabs and came back early, it's like, oh man, if everybody does what I just did, now, we're overfishing the crabs in that particular creek or area of the bay. And it's like, well, now nobody really gets that bushel of crabs at all. You just go out there and maybe get your 5 crabs and you've been out there for 8 hours. And I think kind of like it's one of those things where it's like, I keep hearing gatekeeping used kind of in like a negative term, but it's like, to preserve a lot of things, gatekeeping to an extent has to exist. And it's one of those realities of life that I kind of wish it wasn't so, but I'm also like, all right, if this is a reality, how do we manage that? And, trying to figure out how do you vet a friend for like doing something, extreme. You're like, oh man, maybe I want to show them this real secret spot. Well, you try guiding them through a series of increasing levels. I know like a lot of people are like, oh, well, that seems kind of like pompous or something, where it's like, oh, that's way, what are you doing? It's like, just take him to the first spot. But, I've lost a lot of, status places because it's like, say you've got like a pond where, it's on private property and, the owner well enough, they like, they know it's you when you're going down there fishing, and you ask if you can bring a friend along, and you go down there with your friend, and everybody's all on good terms, and then it's like behind your back your friend like negotiates a different deal with the owner, and it's like, you come back and you're like, I didn't realize you guys are good friends. And it's like, oh yeah, he comes by, every day after work and with a 6 pack, and you're like, oh now I don't have my fishing spot anymore that I used to. Maybe I may have come out here once a month or something. And it's a lot of like where it's like, it's kind of weird because it's like you get cut out of your own like oasis kind of that you. I guess technically it wasn't your land, but it's also like you may have had a history there and you've been going there for several years. Maybe you kind of grew up and you knew the owner, not necessarily on like that super personal level where they're the first person you call when you've got need issue and you need some help, but you're like, oh, I see you semi regularly, and you have some conversations, and now it's like, oh man, I don't know, maybe I misjudged our whole relationship. Gets you second guessing a little bit, or at least it gets me second guessing a little bit. Really starts making me ask some questions. Cause I know there's a lot of things like that too, where there's a couple different spots that I've had, or even access points to rivers for dropping in and going out on float trips. I personally really have had like a couple spots that it's like, all right, these are really great spots to get into, but there's only about 1 to 3 parking spots at a lot of these spots to get in because they're on relatively tight roads that you're going in and out at. And so it's like if you got 3 or 4 or 5 cars taking up those 3 spots and parked all over the place, it's like, man, I can't even get in here to carry down, a 16-foot canoe with even a friend. And so you're like, oh man, I'd really hate that to happen. So you try to gatekeep to a little bit, but one thing that really frustrates me, I know with like one quarry in particular, it's kind of like the internet got to it, where you have the internet, all it takes is one person to leak the address and say, oh man, this is a really great spot to do whatever activities. And now, you go up there one weekend and there's like 50 people and you're like, man, that's like a 1 acre quarry. Why are there so many people here? And now you're out there and you're like, man, none of the, big fish are here anymore. And I know it's one of those things where it's like things like that, you feel like gatekeeping is a necessity to keep. But it's like, how do you gatekeep responsibly, I guess? That's one thing that I've been trying to figure out. The only way that I know how to do it is like keep it to a real tight circle or have a series of tests. And the series of tests I was talking about isn't necessarily like you don't do anything with somebody, but it's like, maybe you slip up what type of bait you're using on somebody. You say, oh, we're not crabbing with turkey or chicken necks. We're crabbing with some of that bull lip, or we're crabbing with some of that, well, fish guts, really. You say something like that, and if the next thing you know, they're out there telling everybody, oh, we caught all this on fish guts, or we caught all this on bull lip, you're like, well, there kind of goes the chance of you making it to that next level where it's like maybe you do go to a little bit more of a, personal area and you like kind of ramp up. And it's like if at any one step they fail that, maybe you give them a second chance, like maybe when you're out there fishing for something else and you're using butterfish or something, or maybe mackerel, and you're trying to get like bluefish, or maybe you're trying to get some like shark or something. If they slip up there, you're like, well, we had a good run, but we'll just leave our friendship to a shore-only friendship. We're not negotiating on good fishing spots from here on out. I know that that's kind of like a weird thing though too, because I know with the invasive species, particularly snakehead, there's a lot of guys that gatekeep where they're getting snakehead at. And I do get that as well, because it's like, man, you got to keep that secret spot to a certain extent, but you're also like, are you trying to eradicate the species? Or are you trying to, what are you trying to do? Because some of those guys go out And, you might have a dude that's out there line fishing and he gets whatever, but everywhere that you get bow fishers in, or you get somebody that just really wants to pound snakehead, they might go through and tear out, 30 fish, and they're taking all the big ones. Obviously, they're just uh, decimating the population, but they're not necessarily taking the small ones. And sometimes, it's like, why? I guess sometimes you ask yourself, why are you gatekeeping? It's like if you're trying to eradicate the population, you'd almost want that number to get out, but you also don't want people saying, oh, that one's too small, throw it back so it can grow big, because it's like it's an invasive species. Gosh, well, I know that with the snakehead, it's one of those things though too, because what is somebody doing with 30 snakehead? Are they killing them just to kill them, or are they killing them with the intention of eating the meat themselves, like making jerky or making some of those nuggets out of them, or are they trying to do something a little bit more in depth, like sell them to a restaurant? Because then it's like you're kind of changing a little bit what you're doing. I guess one of the things is with like gatekeeping in general is the reason why you're gatekeeping is you're trying to ascertain whether or not somebody's goals are aligned close enough with what you're kind of intending to do that they're not going to go behind your back and flip the switch on you and say, oh, you know what? I'm just going to blow up the spot that, maybe. Well, I know with crabs in particular, there's some spots where, you get some nice big crabs. Might get like a 7-inch crab and you're like, wow, you get these things pretty consistently here. And it's like once you have a large enough population crabbing for 7-inch crabs, they'll crab out the population so that, right at that 5-inch, they're pulling them. And none of the crabs will get to that nice, jumbo size. They don't get that, extra meaty, robust. You know what I mean? And, well, maybe you don't know what I mean, but I hope you understand the words. I just know that it's one of those things where it's something I've been thinking about a lot. Because there's always a reason to think about who you're telling stuff to, and way too often I get to the point where it's only after that my spot's been lost that I'm like, man, I screwed that one up. And I guess to a certain, I don't know, screwed up's perfectly right, but it's like, well, that was not my intended outcome. And so I guess like one of the things that I'm trying to say is, if you're doing something or you're gatekeeping or you're not gatekeeping, ask yourself why. And you got to get a little bit introspective. Am I doing this for myself? Am I doing this for, conserving the area? Am I doing this for someone else? And, the answer you come to is going to be your own. So, it's not really an answer that I can give you. But I know that for me, it feels so, well, I don't know. It kind of feels weird when you misjudge somebody and you're like, man, I feel like I'm holding the bag on something I never intended to have a bag with. Well, all right, not to get you down, have a good one, I guess gatekeep the secrets that you want to keep and let the secrets that you don't think need to remain secret go. It's about the best I can give you for today. Have fun, enjoy yourselves, keep on smiling, and have a fun one. Thanks for watching to the end.